So we know that the world must move away from fossil fuels if we're to reach net zero by 2050, but there is still a problem, and that is, how do we balance the grid when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining? Now, experts believe that wave energy could be the missing puzzle piece, but despite recent progress, it's still not affordable. And that is the problem that we are solving with WaveX. So this is our renewable, sustainable, and continuous source of power. We take a proven technology to generate the electricity and combine it with our innovative solution to finally make it cheap enough. And this innovation is working under the sea floor. So the proven principle remains the same. Researchers and other startups have proven that the most efficient and reliable way of generating electricity from waves is to capture the energy from the seabed, where you're protected from the most damaging consequences of storms. However, they embed these flexible membranes within a 900-ton metallic structure, which keeps the cost of energy ridiculously high. We, on the other hand, take these membranes and embed them within the seabed, where they can be properly protected, ditching the structure, reducing the device's weight by 60 times and its cost by 50 times. And we've learned how to do this by copying this guy. This is the stargazer fish, and he takes water in through his mouth, pushes it out through his gills into the sediment, and effortlessly buries himself within the sediment. And it is simply this that we're doing with our membranes. So we have 2 patents pending protecting this particular innovation, and this gives us access to a huge range of other IP opportunities. So reducing the weight and cost of our devices allows us to target an energy cost of only 5 cents per kilowatt hour. That is twice as cheap as both gas and coal energy is currently. We can also define our products by what they do not do. They do not generate any noise. They do not take up any space on land. They're out of sight and therefore out of way of navigation of vessels. And they have negligible impact on the local biodiversity. They also have a positive impact, and that is combating coastal erosion as they reduce the energy of waves hitting the shore. We sell our devices to project developers who then manage the installation and maintenance for a variety of end users. We are able to scale quickly due to outsourced manufacturing and have 2 main revenue streams going forwards. That is the device sale price itself, and also an ongoing annual revenue generated from monitoring solutions, which we sell as a subscription model to the end users. And as you can see, over the roughly 20-year lifespan of our devices, this revenue becomes quite significant. So as you can appreciate, the global market for electricity is vast and indeed growing. We found that roughly 40,000 kilometers of coastline globally, where our solution outperforms all of our competitors, allowing us to prevail on around 20 billion euros of this market. Our team shares a passion for marine environments and has the necessary know-how in terms of engineering, software design, modeling, and also experience in the energy grid. We do lack one critical piece of expertise, however, and that is how to operate flexible structures under the seabed. However, this is completely new expertise, and therefore we as a team are having to build it and use it to access all of the opportunities that I described. We will have a comfortable 60% margin on our devices and monitoring going forwards. In order to reach profitability, however, we will start selling earlier, much simpler devices, mainly in the monitoring sector. This we will do for several reasons, including this initial revenue is useful for our R&D, but also we can help build some partnerships. 1 minute warning. Thank you. With future partners and customers, and we can also use these installations to start prototyping and testing in real-world environments sooner than we would otherwise be able to. So we've spent the last 2 years prototyping parts of our devices on beaches around the UK, and this has allowed us to file 2 patents protecting our IP in this technical blind spot. More recently, we've won the European pitching finals for our work and been accepted onto 5 accelerator programs across the UK and France. We now seek 1 million euros in funding to test our technology in lab settings and to file extra patents. And from here, we will seek further funding to develop a full-size prototype, and we would love to get as many of you on board in the journey as we possibly can. Thank you.
And thank you. Thanks for pitching. Let me bring in our other investor panelists quickly. And While I'm sure probably all of the panelists here have gotten this pitch almost once a month in terms of wave energy. What makes you guys so much different? Why is this something this time and not like every other time?
Sure. So primarily, I would say two broad reasons. The first, obviously, being the cost. We've seen all sorts of wave energy startups in the past just sink money, and they have massive metallic structures, normally floating on the top of the ocean. And this obviously is a massive issue when there's a storm, because on the ocean, you have to be, on the surface, you have to be tethered to something, and you're exposed to a huge, huge force from simple kinetic energy, basically. Whereas if you're on the seabed, then you can protect yourself from that. But we go a step further in the sense that we've really stripped back these devices. So we have competitors who also work on the seabed, but they, as I said, have these huge, like 900-ton structures which hold their devices. This keeps the cost high, but we don't need to do that. So we embed our devices within the seabed, which obviously reduces the cost, but also keeps them doubly safe in that they can actually sink themselves. If there's a storm coming, they can deflate, they can sink themselves further down under the sediment, cover themselves with sediment, and literally hide until the storm has passed. So the massive cost comes from maintaining these structures in really, really horrifically challenging environments. And that's what we've managed to negate.
Okay, Stephanie?
Can you tell us a little bit more about your commercialization process and timeline? I know you all have a prototype now, but when do you anticipate the next iteration and then ultimately being able to sell them?
Sure, absolutely. So we're raising now. So we've prototyped sections of the devices. So we've prototyped the energy generation side of things, and we've prototyped the ability to install these flexible membranes under the seabed. So the next phase over the next 12 to 18 months is to bring all of that together. We'll start off in lab settings, but we'll also do some further tests in real environments on the beach. And we'll bring these prototypes together. So we've got one integrated prototype, which we can install, operate, generate electricity, and all of that. And then once we've done this, as I say, 12 to 18 months, we'll have done some testing, we'll have got some data and validated that. Then we'll begin to scale up, and our next prototype will be pretty much full scale. And that's going to be where we start doing durability testing. We leave it, out off the coast of the UK or France or somewhere for several months at a time. And we can then use that prototype to ensure that it's, iron out all the wrinkles and make sure it's going to work long term. And that's when we can start getting our potential customers involved. And that's looking to be about probably 2 to 3 years from now.
Got it.
We've had one of my challenges with wave energy, and you see lots of devices. We still don't know the best modality of taking energy out of a wave, whether it's a wave bob actuation, whether it's a Panelists, whether it's an ocean wave, whether it's a renewable hydro. You know this. I mean, your colleagues in the EF bought some Irish companies in this space and in the tidal space. We still don't know the most efficient modality of taking energy out of a wave. And then we add in the scaling, and then we add in the durability in setting, and your point is well made about going to the seabed. Can you tell me a little bit about how efficient an energy capture this is? And bear in mind that my next question is going to be the scale that you need to operate at. That is a durable device in the sea.
Sure. Clement, you want to take this?
I can. Yeah, thanks. The other project that used the same technology for wave energy conversion through a submerged pressure differential, their estimates for load factor is around 15%. The thing is that their capacity factor is proportional to their active surface. The power they can make out is proportional to the active surface, and the price of their installation is almost proportional to their active surface. Yeah. The thing is with our solution is that we can maybe keep a capacity factor per we can keep a yield per surface pretty low, but we can extend the surface very much, as it's really, really cheap to build and to install. And that way, we're expecting to be able to raise the capacity factor. And what was the other part of your question?
Well, if I just jump on that point, the bigger your device, the less durable it's going to be. The more it's going to be exposed to rip, tear, power takeoff issues.
Yeah, the maintenance costs will be proportional, but well, for most other projects, the design, the initial design and installation, and the material, the initial material is highly high capex. Ours is really not, and the maintenance will be somewhat proportional, but with the ability to sink during storms, we expect to have, well, lower needs for maintenance.
I should also just add in here, when we're talking about scaling up these devices, it's not simply a case of we have two balloons and we make the balloons that much bigger, because you're right, that in terms of durability, and that's
lots of balloons. Yeah,
exactly. So we have a whole array of balloons. So actually we have the same component that we just replicate several times and connect them all up to a larger turbine.
So you plug them in and out like cells almost.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
we hope.
What depth and distance to shore do you think you're going to have these devices?
So we're looking at somewhere between 8 and 20 meters of water depth. So compared to our competitors, we're incredibly near shore. This is sort of between maybe 100-200 meters and sort of 700-800 meters offshore. So actually, in terms of installation and ongoing maintenance, you can survey and you can maintain these devices very cheaply. You don't need necessarily even to hire vessels and stuff to get you out there. And also you can do it with divers. So there's no need for sort of unmanned submersibles, those sorts of things, which again brings the cost down.
And grid connection is really lower too, the cost of grid connection.
Absolutely.
So just, sorry, last question for me for a second. I don't want to hog it, but if you've got a 40 megawatt array, what physical size is that? Very roughly.
So I can give you a 1.5 megawatt array is roughly 15 meters along shore and 40 meters out to sea. And we can generate roughly 50 megawatts per 100 meters of coastline. So there's your answer, really. It's sort of about 100 meters across and then maybe a couple of 100 meters out to sea.
50 megawatts per kilometer of coast.
Kilometer.
Cool.
Can you tell us a little bit about your IP strategy?
Sure. So the two patents we've got pending at the moment cover the ability to install and sync flexible structures under the seabed, which if you look on patent databases is completely unexplored. So we've got quite a lot of freedom to operate in that particular scenario. And that also is very beneficial in terms of we've found some other sort of supplementary markets where our technology could be useful. And those are namely in coastal monitoring. So being able to detect how the seabed is changing, which is very useful in ports and places like that, where they need to know, are we silting up? Are we, are things eroding quicker than we thought? But also in coastal protection. So we're currently investigating another use for our technology, which is we take the membranes and we sink them, we inflate them, and we create a sandbar. And this sandbar acts like a submerged breakwater and can actually protect areas of the coastline from the most damaging waves. So over the next year or so, and that's what part of the funding that we're raising now will go towards, is to file some extra patents to protect specifically these extra areas of opportunity, I guess, these supplementary markets. And it's these markets which we'll be selling devices to in the near term as we can develop, the monitoring solution we need to develop anyway for the wave energy converters. So once that's developed, we can sell that as a package into the markets I've just described. And that will bring in some early revenue in order to fund further R&D on the wave energy side. So, yeah.
Could that bring in governmental grants for governments that don't want their beaches getting wrecked?
Yeah, so we're currently talking to the Environment Agency, who are doing some work specifically on flood and coastal resilience at the moment. They've got a number of projects going that we're in discussions about. and also the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency in the UK. They do all of the hydrography and mapping of ports and coastal regions in the UK. So we're also talking to them about whether they want to start a project with us as well. So yes, there are little projects ongoing that we're tapping into.
And are you filing these patents globally, or like what's sort of your regional strategy there?
Sure. So the two that have been filed already are EU patents currently, but they're in the final stages of approval in the EU. And then we're just about to extend them, not entirely globally, but certainly to sort of Australia, Japan, those sorts of regions where actually the wave resource is ideal for our devices. So we're being quite strategic in the sense that we're targeting parts of the world where we are likely to either, it may be our pilot or it may be in the first few years we'll need to start exploring.
Makes sense.
How much more favorable are you than just solar? Because solar costs are coming down pretty exponentially, and it's very proven.
Sure. So on this note, it purely comes down to the fact that we're a more stable source of energy. So solar, you have the night and day issue, whereas waves, because there's a whole number of factors influencing waves, that it's a much more steady source of energy. And in terms of cost, I mean, I've mentioned the improvements in cost we've made on other wave energy startups and concepts, but it is just going to be a case of time. So we've already started at a very low cost for wave energy, but as time goes on, and the main cost for us, in fact, is the turbine cost, as the membranes and stuff are relatively cheap, but turbines are things that we will have to buy in, but also connecting to the grid. So the grid connection cost is a massive part of our cost and something we can't do anything about yet. But as offshore installations, be that wind, be that tidal, be that wave, become more familiar and more common around the coastlines in the UK and France and everywhere, then the less the cost will become, because we can just tap into existing connections which are already there.
But as those grow and there is more of those existing connections, will they need you? When there's wind and there's solar and there's other sources that are there to kind of make up for the off hours, so to speak, is that something where you're going to be, because I feel like with this, there's so much extra risk involved versus anything else. It has to have a significantly better ROI, because otherwise, why?
Sure. Well, I think the way that we're marketing it is that we can fill in the gap. So if you're an energy provider or you're a project developer that has already got this infrastructure there, you've already got a grid connection, we can effectively offer you some additional revenue, because when your connection isn't producing much because the wind's not blowing, we can provide some energy to use on your infrastructure that will bring you some additional revenue. So we're sort of plugging the gaps in that sort of sense.
Yeah, actually, the comparison should be not the cost of solar energy or wind energy, but the cost of solar energy or wind energy plus storage. And it's that we need to compare to.
But what's I don't know the demand pricing, but I feel like at night, energy costs are probably much lower than they are during the day because people are asleep. I might be totally off there, but I feel like you would get a premium during the day because it's needed more.
True, but in winter, price is much higher than in summer, and sun is not producing as much. So that's another reason to add other sources and other, well, it's sort of a mitigation problem. When you have several sources, you need less storage or backups, rather than if you only have one that is specifically going to produce all at the same time.
Do you really think you're going to be building these as power? Sorry, let me rephrase. Do you think you're going to be operating them as power generators, or are you going to be selling them to EDF, selling them to ESB, selling them to RWE for them to operate off their wind farms or off their grid connections? Or do you actually foresee yourself becoming a generator?
No, so the way the business model is set up currently is that we are not the generator. We will sell the devices to a third party who will just then that way scaling becomes much simpler
because
and much quicker.
Because if you had an erosion protection system of kilometre scale, councils will pay you 11 million. The Crown Estate will pay you 11 million for that type. That's the kind of capital expenditure that they're going to put into groins and concrete walls and all these other methodologies. So they're going to pay you the equivalent amount of money as you think you'll be doing for power generation. They'll pay you that for coastline preservation, if it worked.
Exactly. So that's what this next 12 months hopefully will be able to tell us is, are these other markets viable and what size are they?
So I wonder, this is more of a comment than a question, apologies if that's not the right format for it, but I wonder, would you have a really even more interesting pitch if you propose this as a climate mediation or adaptation solution rather than a generation source, where you're going to get thrown lots of questions about having to compare with wind, solar, battery, wind, solar, storage, nighttime, daytime, etc. Developers, not developers. If you sold this as a climate mitigation, would it be cleaner for you for an investment?
Sure, quite possibly. So we've currently got a researcher at Imperial College working with us to computer model our capability in how much energy can we actually reduce if we just raise a sandbar. Is this meaningful, or is this actually, compared to a concrete breakwater, is this actually just child's play? We don't really know yet. So hopefully the next year will tell us that, and then it may well be we'll speak to you again in 12 months time and actually we're completely different, and we're pushing something different as our main offering. But yes, we'll see over the next 12 months, hopefully.
Do you have any worries that, I feel like when you are modeling this out and as you are starting to generate power and also deal with the coastline erosion, etc., every single inch of coast is going to be different based off of the kind of ocean floor topography, etc. So is that something that you're going to be able to map out and project well, or are there going to be different, for instance, resonances, etc., where you've got to get everything exactly right with each project? Otherwise, you're generating just much less. It seems like, as opposed to solar, where I kind of set it up and I can see how much radiation is coming from the sun, what the angles are, there feel like a lot more variables when you're in the water.
Sure, no, there are, absolutely. And the only answer I can give to that is that the things that we'll be modeling over the next year or so are, how do we best account for that? So as I mentioned, we have various different numbers of balloons, and those can be spaced at different intervals. And we'll have to do various hydrographic surveys and various environmental surveys before we install on any site. And part of that will be working out what the wave resource is, what the average wavelength of waves are, and we hopefully can tailor these installations to the specific sites.
And an advantage that we do have too is that compared to concrete submerged breakwaters, they are installed in one place and will not move till the end of the project. Our systems can be inflated, deflated actively, dynamically, and we can try to learn in this specific place what will be the best way to, when will be the best time to inflate them and deflate them.
But that's almost completely unscalable, because every place is like a consulting project then, right?
Well, there's artificial intelligence data mining for that.
We have a monitoring solution which people may be interested in as well, to scope out sites as well.
Interesting. I see a lot of potential, just a lot of risk as well. You wanted to say something, Alan?
I was just going to say, Matt, you were saying that we're not all that sharky. I didn't know we could open up the tough.
Yeah, I don't know. Open up the tough ones. I mean, don't offer like the $5 for the 10% and your grandma's included kind of Shark Tank Kevin O'Leary deal. But yeah, no, you can go as deep as you want to. The whole point is to go deep, ask hard questions, and make it valuable for the founders and also for investors.
Cool.
Any last questions, folks?
No, but if on that spirit of being helpful, there's a bunch of folk in Ireland that I can connect you to. Obviously, you know the Open Hydro guys, or your colleagues will, but also people from Wave Bob and Tony Lewis, who set up a lot of the European standards around scaling engineering of wave tech and things like that. So I'll connect you to a bunch of those folk offline.
Thank you very much. Thank you.